I've been thinking, 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 I've been thinking about you. 아무리 고개 흔들어도 난 네 생각만 하고 있을 뿐. 아무리 딴짓해봐도 난 너의 목소리만 들릴 뿐. 있으면 내 here with me. 가득 심장이면 please tell me. 열리 고백해볼까?
Did you know that the store-bought nuts that you are buying in the store might be silently robbing you of nutrients? And it's true. Despite their wholesome reputation, many commercially available nuts have enzyme inhibitors in them and other compounds that can rob nutrient absorption from our body. So fear not. Today we are diving into the topic of sprouting, where we are going to uncover some simple techniques to unlock the full potential of nuts and seeds, ensuring that you get the most out of your food and every bite. So welcome to the Daily Energy Bite, your Deb show. It's your daily dose of vitality. And we're thrilled to be kicking off our 5-day journey into the wonderful world of sprouting. Woo! So whether you're a seasoned sprouter or you're completely new to this concept, get ready to dive into a wealth of information about the simple yet powerful way to enhance your nutrition and your well-being. So today we are going to lay the foundation on the sprouting with the basics. What exactly is sprouting? Why is it so good? Why should you incorporate sprouting into your lifestyle? So stick around and we will uncover the answer to these questions and more. All right. So a couple of years ago, when I signed up for the Pacha Vega Living Foods course, I had no idea about sprouting and the benefits. And also, as I mentioned, why we need to be sprouting our nuts. I had no idea about that. So when I signed up for Pacha Vega Living Foods Education Program, I learned all about sprouting. We did all of the techniques ourselves, and we learned about the importance. And I was shocked about the importance of having sprouting your nuts before you and seeds before you eat them, because we do eat seeds as well. We have seeds in like sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds. So those kind of seeds that we're eating as well, not just the seeds that we grow in the soil, but the ones that we eat, we should be sprouting. So I think it's a really good idea also to review these concepts if you're not new to them, because it's easy to forget why it's so important for us to be sprouting our nuts and seeds. And you know what? It's easy to get lazy as well. I hate to say it, but it is. So, hey, ladies, how are you today? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Good to see you too.
All right. Good.
It's good to see you both.
Great start to the week. Especially, I think it's a holiday in both the U.S. and Canada, so that's all good. So I hope a lot of people are enjoying the day and just relaxing and learning about sprouting. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the benefits of sprouting. So why should we sprout? when I was younger, you hear about like alfalfa sprouts, and that was about it, and putting them into your food or into like a sandwich or a salad. But you don't see them around a lot, and there weren't very many people who were doing it. That was like for just for those, I don't know, weird people back then. I'm not saying they're weird because I love all of the people. And now I do more sprouting too. But sprouting isn't just about growing tiny plants from seeds. It's actually how you can unlock the treasure of nutrients and to make them more accessible for our body. So it's really important. So the seeds hold all the nourishment of the plant, and they also have the energy to start a new plant from the seeds. So there's a lot of potential in the seeds that we can harness and use when we do sprouting. And so when these seeds sprout, they undergo a transformation and they actually have more nutrients, more enzymes, and more vitamins and minerals when they're sprouted than they did when they were a seed, because they are actually, again, going to take that little tiny seed and grow it into a big plant. Sometimes it's like a big tree. So they really are packed with vitamins, minerals, and enzymes, and also antioxidants. So that's why we want to eat them. And because of the enzymes in the seeds when you sprout them, it also enhances the digestibility. They're easier for our body to absorb and to utilize these vital nutrients. It's not about what we eat, it's what our body will absorb. So we have to be, mindful of that as well. So a food, this is like a food that's called pre-digested means that it's gone through some form of processing or preparation that breaks down the complex nutrients into simpler nutrients that are easy for our bodies to digest and to absorb. And so this is like basically mimicking the process of digestion, but it's happening before we ingest the foods. And so sprouts are actually a commonly pre-digested food. So when the seeds, the grains, or the legumes are sprouted, the enzymes are activated, and that breaks down the complex carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats into their simplest forms or simpler forms. It means that the nutrients then become bioavailable for us to absorb them more efficiently. And so sprouting pre-digested foods means they're broken down. So carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars. The fats are broken down into fatty acids, and the proteins are broken down into amino acids. And that's how we ingest them into our body. So this is what makes sprouts and sprouting such a powerhouse when it comes to nutrition and nutrients. They are king. And as a matter of fact, when Danielle Arsenault from Pachavega Living Foods education program, she would tell you every day you should eat some sprouts. So I shout out to Danielle. Every day you should eat some sprouts. And I beg to think that not very many of us eat sprouts every day. And I can actually say that I'm in that category too. I need to up my game with my sprouts. All right. So how does sprouting work? So it's pretty simple. It's probably simpler than you think. Because I remember when I was, I say probably about 5 years ago, I went over to this farmer's market where my daughter was working on a Saturday, and I was moseying through, and this guy said, "Hey, I've got this sprouting kit." He says, "Oh, it's easy." And it was really daunting for me. I thought, oh, this has to be complicated. It sounded complicated, but it's actually really easy. And we're going to go through all of why it's easy, how to do it, and how you can easily have sprouts in your kitchen so they're available to you all the time. And you don't have to go and buy them in the store. Because I don't know about you, but in my area, there's not a lot of sprouts around, and sometimes they don't look like they're the freshest either. Probably been sitting around. So there are three steps to sprouting. The first step is soaking. The second step is actually the sprouting step. And the third step, if you go there, not all of the nuts and seeds and go through all of the steps. The third step would be to either grow them or to ferment them. So, you see in probably about this time of year for gardeners, they start getting ready with seedlings. So they're ready to plant the small plants. So they probably are going through their sprouting right now. And sometimes we just put the seeds in the ground into the dirt and they sprout in the dirt. But that's why we have to water them. So that's the soaking part. All right. Are you ready for soaking?
I'm ready for soaking.
First step. So all nuts and seeds should be soaked before you eat them, okay? Or before you consume them. And so I don't think this is widely known. I know it's not widely known because I had no idea before I took the Pacha Vega course about sprouting and the importance of sprouting your nuts and seeds. And yeah, it's nuts as well as seeds. So nuts and seeds have enzyme inhibitors. So that basically, if you could think of it as a coating around the seed or the nut, and it protects the seeds and the nuts from rotting or going rancid, or also it inhibits them from growing. And that's why when you sprouting a seed, when you grow them in the ground and you have to water them, the first step is to get rid of the enzyme inhibitor so that the seed can actually start growing. So they don't grow as long as the enzyme inhibitor is there. So, for example, if you take an almond is really a good example because you can see that brown skin on the almond is actually the enzyme inhibitor. So that's what's keeping it from going rancid, rotting, or also to grow, to want to grow. So we want to soak the nuts and seeds to remove the enzyme inhibitor. So it goes in. So basically, it dissolves into the water, and then from there, your seed can start to grow. So the soaking process is really important. And not only is it just that you have this coating on it. Here's the deal with the enzyme inhibitor. It actually is an wow. It's actually an anti-nutrient. That means it actually prevents us from absorbing the nutrients into our body. So it actually is inhibiting us from being able to absorb the minerals and the vitamins. And it actually is taking nutrients away from our body. So here you've got all these great nutrients in the nuts and seeds, but if the enzyme inhibitor is there, it's actually detracting and we're not getting the benefits of the nutrients. But once you soak them, then you rinse them off, and then you can either use them, they're going to be wet and soggy. You can use them as they are. So a good example of that is cashews. A lot of times people use cashews. And I think I thought this, and sometimes people do the quick soak just to soften them. But kind of the reason why we think we're soaking our cashews is so that they'll blend and they won't have a grainy texture when they're softened. But the real important reason is to remove the enzyme inhibitors from them, from the coating on them. Same thing when you're, soaking your almonds, maybe. So you could use wet almonds or wet nuts in a milk, like a nut milk. If you make a nut milk, you don't need to dry them. But let's say you're not using them wet in a recipe right away, then you want to dry them so they kind of regain their crunchy texture and format. So now, how do you dry them? Now, I have a dehydrator, and so I use the dehydrator. So it's actually a really good tool for drying the nuts. You put them on the tray and make sure you've got, they've got a little bit of room between them. And you would put them in a single layer on the dehydrator tray and then set the dehydrator to a low temperature, usually around 115 degrees Fahrenheit. So that'll preserve all the enzymes and vitamins and nutrients, and it allows them to dry. It'll take somewhere, depending on the nut or the seed, say 8, 10, 12, maybe up to 24 hours to dry them. So I'll just put them on the dryer sheet, on the dryer tray, on the dehydrator, and put them in and set it to 115, and then come back later, a few hours later, and move them around a little bit. And I usually do leave them on, especially like walnuts and almonds for about a day, so 24 hours. And so then so you can check on them and dry them in the dehydrator. You could also dry them in your oven. Now, in your oven, you're going to put them on a baking sheet, probably lined with parchment paper. And then you're going to want to set your oven temperature to the lowest that you can in your oven. So I don't know what, ovens are at. To be honest, I don't know. So some ovens I don't know if it goes down to 150 Fahrenheit, might be a little bit more than that, but go to the lowest temperature you can. And then you're going to want to leave the door open so that the moisture escapes. And then you're going to want to rotate them and, kind of come and move them around and dry them. So that's going to take, depending on your temperature of your oven, anywhere from 4 to 12 hours. And when you're getting up to 150 and above, you are cooking them in a sense that the temperature is getting a little higher. So you may lose some of the nutrients, but at least you're getting the nutrients because you're soaking them. So when you see sprouted nuts in a recipe, that's really what it means, is just to soak them before you use them. So you've got the enzyme inhibitor removed. So a couple other ways that you can dry them. You can air dry them. If you're in a dry climate, that probably works better, but you basically could put them on a kind of a tea towel, a kitchen towel, or a drying rack, and allow them to air dry. It would probably take 1 to 2 days to do that. So, but you can do it. And if you're lucky enough to live somewhere in the sun and you have a nice place that you can put them in the sun, you could always dry them in the sun. I don't know that I would be able to do that here, but you never know. If you live somewhere that you can, that would be good. The other thing, if you're going to do that, you want to make sure you're protecting them from pests and birds and maybe squirrels. So, I don't know how certainly it's not practical here because they would get gobbled up in no time here. But you never know if you've got a nice place that you can do that. And that's going to take, again, a day or two. So for me, I would just as soon leave them on the kitchen counter for a couple of days to let them dry. But regardless of the drying method, make sure they are totally, completely dry before you store them, because otherwise you could get mold or, spoil. They could spoil. And so if they're ready and they've been dried, they should be on kind of on the crispy side and feel dry to the touch. I think you should know by kind of feel. So once they're dried, then you want to store them in an airtight container, and you want to store them somewhere in a cool, dry place so that you avoid them going rancid. And because they've got a lot of oils in them. So I put mine I usually put mine in the freezer. We keep all our nuts in the freezer. You could put them in the fridge if you have space. We usually don't have space in our fridge. So I keep them in the freezer. After I soak them and I dry them, I usually put them in a mason jar and put those in the freezer, and then just fill up the different kind of nuts, because I usually have a supply of, kind of the obvious nuts that this kind of standard nuts like almonds and cashews, pecans and walnuts, some others. And also, your nuts, your seeds as well, like sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds, those kind of seeds as well. So that's the first step, soaking them. And if you're doing seeds, we're going to talk about more. So for your nuts, you would soak them, and that's kind of the step, and dry them typically. But then for some of your seeds, you're going to go on to the sprouting part. So, and basically then now you're going to remove the water and let them start to germinate, and you'll start seeing a little sprout coming out. It's kind of cool. They're like your little babies. So let's talk about the seeds and the quality of the seeds. So you can buy seeds that are really meant for sprouting at the store or online, on Amazon or whatever. There's lots of companies that do sell sprouting seeds. You want to look for ones that are organic and non-GMO, and that they're labeled specifically for sprouting. So, it's not the ones that you would buy to plant in your garden necessarily. You can buy them for sprouting, and you want to make sure that they're free from, and that's why you want to get organic and non-GMO, is you want to make sure they're free from chemicals and pesticides. And then they should be tested. They will be tested for optimal germination as well. So some of the popular seeds that people will sprout are alfalfa, broccoli sprouts, lentils and quinoa are actually good for sprouting. Mung beans, they kind of like, your bean sprouts. So that's how you can get those. And radish seeds, they've got like daikon radish and stuff. So those are some. I know from the microgreens, pea shoots are also pretty popular. And we'll talk a little bit about the micro greens as well. Not today, but later. But you can feel free to experiment. I bought a brand, like a blend that has the one I got here now is a sandwich blend. So it's got about 3 or 4 different sprouts in it. You can see they're different size of the seeds. So, you can do that. But there's definitely specific for sprouting. Now, when you get them, you want to properly store them before you sprout them. So you want to maintain their viability and freshness. And their viability does go down. They do lose their ability to sprout as they get older. So you want to watch for that too. So here are some guidelines for your shelf life and the storage of your seeds. The first one may be obvious, but to choose high quality seeds. So this is where you're going to look for ones that I've already said are labeled for sprouting. They're organic, non-GMO, from reputable suppliers. So then you're going to get the optimal germination of them and the nutrient quality. Check the expiry dates. They should have an expiry date on it before you purchase. And if it's online, you can't really do that, but hopefully you're dealing with a reputable brand that's not going to send you ones that are expiring. And you want to choose the ones with the longest shelf life because they'll remain viable for longer. You want to store them in a cool, dry place, away from direct sunlight, moisture, and heat. So if you're doing them in your house, a pantry or cupboard in your kitchen with a stable temperature and not too much humidity would be a good place to store them. And avoid storing them actually in the fridge or freezer, because the moisture from the fridge and the freezer can actually make them deteriorate. You want to use an airtight container, so you could actually put them into mason jars or some other glass jars to store them when you get them home. And then you want to label them to make sure that you know what they are, and they're also when you purchase them, and kind of if you know what the expiry date is, that will help. And then if you're going to do this on a kind of a real gung-ho, I'm going to do this, and you're going to buy them in bulk and do a lot of sprouting, then you'll want to make sure you're rotating your stock and use your older seeds first. So that helps prevent them from sitting around, and then they some of them can go bad, but also they're just not gonna turn into a plant or start sprouting. And then you want to keep them dry. So this is moisture is the enemy, and for obvious reasons, because when we soak them, we're starting to that's when they're going to start losing their enzyme inhibitors, and so they can rot when they're in moisture, and then you can't use them, obviously. And if they accidentally get wet, dry them first, kind of like we did with our nuts, where after you soak them, you dry them before you put them into storage again. So you want to make sure you get rid of all of whatever moisture there was. Maybe you accidentally drop them into the sink or something. Dry them first, make sure they're really dry, and then put them into the container. And so you can also monitor for signs of spoilage, which would be mold, discoloration, or a foul odor. So when you're doing your sprouting, they should smell. They should not have an odd aroma to them. And if they are showing signs of deterioration, then you want to get rid of them. Don't keep them around anymore, for sure. So that is a start. This is like the basics of sprouting, give you an idea, kind of maybe a little more of the theory behind it. Are there any questions from what we talked about today?
So I just have one comment.
Sure.
So the house I grew up in had an oven from the 1950s. And then when my folks redid the kitchen, they got a new oven, but it's an oven that's like a digital oven,
Yep.
you don't. And so I came over to broil chicken for my parents, and I broke the oven. Because when I would broil the chicken, I would keep the door open, and that fried the computer system.
Oh no.
So yes, but I mean, it in my oven at home, it's a great way to cook chicken, right? It's so yummy. So if I was doing the sprouts at a really low temperature, do you think I should keep the door open or closed? Because I'm a little bit nervous about that.
About leaving it open or leaving it closed?
Leaving it open, because I'm worried it'll cook the computer in the
Oh,
oven.
I see. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that's a good point. I have no idea. I think that would depend on your oven.
Okay.
Because I know like when you put it on broil,
It's really hot
you're
on broil.
supposed to leave the oven cracked open when you're broiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have no idea. Maybe that was faulty. I have no idea. To be honest, I'd never heard of that. But I think, if you're concerned about it, you should check with whatever brand of oven that you have, if there's any issues with that. And if there is, then, your other option is, even though it takes longer, just lie them out on your counter if you can, and do them that way. I
Gotcha.
know it takes more space, but it might be the better way. Or buy yourself a dehydrator. That's the other option. You can get, I've got a high quality dehydrator, but when my mom, we actually had one that it was under $100. So then the quality isn't as good, obviously, but it did the trick if you're just doing occasional stuff. I think you can buy your nuts already sprouted, but that's like in a specialty store. That's not what you're going to find in the average grocery store. And I'm
Okay.
guessing that you're going to pay a premium price for the nuts that are sprouted already, when it's so easy to do it at home. Just soak them and
Yeah.
then dry them, right? So I guess you gotta figure it out. And I'm not even sure where all the oven temperatures are. That's something. But given, it's something that to be honest, I toyed in my mind about talking about, in the recipes, because we've done some stuff with nuts. And I toyed with talking about the sprouting and doing the sprouted nuts, but I honestly didn't want to get into it because it's an extra complication. But now that we've done the sprouting, I can put in, sprout your nuts, see the sprouting episode, right? So for people to actually know. So thank you, Kathy, for suggesting this topic, because it's actually really important, and there is a lot to it, but it's actually really simple to do the sprouting. Really simple. We will demystify it. So I don't know if there's any other questions.
I reserve the right to ask more questions, but none at this time.
That's okay. None at this time. Well, that's all that I wanted to talk about today. Just introducing the whole concept of sprouting. Join us tomorrow when we go deeper into the world of sprouts. And we're going to explore growing your own sprouts right in your own kitchen. So including what equipment that you need and how the process works. So the good news is it's really simple. So until tomorrow, remember to stay energized and we can start sprouting. So when you join us tomorrow, we're here at 2 p.m. On day 2 of sprouting. Also, be sure to follow me for more of the tips that we have. And we are signing off from the Energy Bite, Daily Energy Bite, and we will see you tomorrow for more sprouting. Bye, everyone.